Welcome everyone, this is Kerjims channel. Now we are back to our episodes of General Champions and Comparison, featured by Wild League of Legends versus the Mobile Legend Bang Gang. But before that, please like and subscribe to my channel and don't forget to click the bell icon so you will be notified to our new next episode video. Let's do this!
That's why here in this cinematic, Yone calls Yasuo out, and how he was supposed to protect him, by whom he is the Elder, saying that Yone was supposed to protect Ionia. And yet, as they look around, all they see is blood. That's what's staining the ground. It is Yone sitting in their village instead of venturing out and actually killing Noxian. I do believe that is what Yasuo is talking about here. That is why Yone's honor stains the ground. But I'm pretty sure that when Yone's bio is released, we will get more info on his side of the story. Then Yone briefly mentions, "I'm sorry, I will not fail you again." And what he's talking about here is the fact that Yone blamed himself for not being an inspiration to Yasuo. Yasuo was always impatient, and he always rushed everywhere and he wanted to do everything quickly. And as his elder brother, Yone felt like it was his duty to make sure his younger brother stayed on the right path. And yet here, he had to fight him. And then, after you see Yasuo using his wind technique, which is represented here by the black and white lines around his blade, he then wakes up. And interestingly enough, if you pay attention to the blade here, you can notice there is dried blood on it. And this will be important later. Of course, this was just a nightmare, and as we get to see his own reflection in the blade, there is even more dried blood, which is even more foreshadowing. And then, by this shot, it is revealed that Yasuo is likely in Well. Again, we have seen this tree many times, mainly at the end of Lilia's cinematic. But since we know that this is the place where they celebrate the Spirit Blossom Festival, since the main place to celebrate that event is in Well, there is a really high chance that this is where we are, although it is still not 100% guaranteed. And then, as Yasuo walks through the festival, you may notice that most of the people have the same clothes, and those are the festival robes, which were also mentioned in the parental story. But then Yasuo rams into an old man, and he calls him Opa, which is an Ionian word for grandfather. Either way, this old man also fits one of the art you can find on Universe. That's just a tiny reference. And then, after Yasuo helps the old man get back to his feet, the old man asks him if he wants to commune, which of course is what people do during the Spirit Blossom Festival. Just to quickly sum it up, during this festival, it is the only time in a year when the Spirit Blossoms bloom. Now when people die, their spirits can possess the Spirit Blossom. And when they bloom, that's the spirit's only chance to communicate with the living. So normally what one would do is that they would pick up the bloom with the soul of someone they know, and they would drink the spirit. And that's how they get connected to them. That's how, during this festival, the living have a chance to talk to the dead. And so, as Yasuo looks to the tree, it is obvious that up on the tree is where he would likely find a blossom with the soul of Yone. Although, with that said, after the Noxian invasion, there were so many dead in Ionia that there simply aren't enough blossoms for everyone. Anyway, after that the old man calls Yasuo, Yasuo, which should be surprising, because normally Yasuo hides pretty well, and usually it is not normal for him to get recognized. But it is possible now that people know who he is, because in the story Confessions of a Broken Blade, Yasuo loosened up, and he actually talked to a few people in a few villages. And so it is possible that he was forgiven by more and more people. Although, in that story, it was more about Reborn being forgiven by the Ionians. The point is, it is still suspicious that this old man recognized him. Which, considering that you know what happens later, it should have been a hint for Yasuo. And things didn't get any less suspicious after the old man offered Yasuo his own temple to communicate with the dead, instead of trying to reach the Blossom Tree before the end of the Blossom Festival. And so, as Yasuo follows him to the temple, which you can see here at the back, once again, just like in the Z comic, here we have even more Titanic statues. Just for context, these titanic statues existed in Ionia before the human civilization even became a thing. So we don't know the purpose of these titanic statues. And we don't even know why they are all ruined. But we do know that they tie to the past, during which it was rumored that Titans walked on Runeterra. The old man mentioned that it had taken years before the Spirit Blossom's return, which is true. This was also mentioned in the Perennial story. And once again, this happened because of the Noxian invasion. With the war ruining the lands, I guess the lands just didn't feel like blooming the Spirit Blossom. And then, surprisingly, as the old man drops a Spirit Petal into the river, which by the way might be a reference to the Spirit Petals which you give to people during the dating scene. But that's not important. The old man calls this river River Valley. So yes, we are in Valley all along. Now it is 100% confirmed. And as we get this shirtless shot of Yasuo, we have two things to mention. First of all, I do believe that this is a reference to the image that was used to tease the entire event, where Yasuo, for no reason at all, was standing in water. But also, if you have a look at this blade, you can see the dried blood washing away. And that is what this scene is supposed to represent. It is Yasuo washing away his past. Despite the fact that the dried blood probably comes from a random warrior. If this was Yone's, Yasuo would be pretty bad at this blade. And then, as we get this beautiful shot of the past, the story shows you exactly what I was talking about at the beginning. Yasuo was always hot-headed, and he quickly rushed into everything. And so here as well, Yasuo was probably defending himself from some bullies. But in fighting back, he probably also dishonored himself. Because one shouldn't fight unless they really have to. And that's why here, his brother looks disappointed. Because once again, as his elder brother, he feels like it should be his responsibility to keep Yasuo on the right path. But considering how young Yasuo is here, it is probably happening before they discover that Yasuo is able to wield the wind. So here, Yone doesn't have to prove anything, because he was already accepted among the Blade Masters. While Yasuo wasn't, because of how he was behaving. So here Yasuo probably wanted to prove himself strong, so others would see him as a worthy soldier. And then we jump to a point where the two brothers are also. And here they were both already accepted among the soldiers. And once again, remember how at the beginning I was talking about the elder of their village? And how it was Yasuo's duty to protect him? That's what Yone is talking about here. He told Yasuo that his place is next to Elder Soma, while others are going out to kill the Noxian. And Yasuo argues back that he was trained for this. He was trained to kill hundreds of enemies quickly with his winter. And then it cuts to Yasuo holding a Spirit Blossom. Now honestly, this part confused me. Because in the Perennial story, it was revealed that people actually look for the souls inside the Spirit Blossom. Which means that Yasuo would have to find the blossom somewhere. And I have no idea where he would get it. But here Yasuo seems to be convinced that this is the Spirit Blossom with the essence of Yone. But whether it actually is or isn't doesn't matter, as you'll see in just a second. And then the old man offers him the Spirit Tea, which is the tea I was talking about at the beginning as well. Anyway, as he hands him the tea, in the background again you can see another Titanic statue. But then, as he drinks the tea, Yasuo starts getting flashbacks, which is not what is supposed to happen. And when he drops the Spirit Blossom, it turns out it was just an illusion. Which, you know, makes sense. Because I'm not sure how would Yasuo actually find a Spirit Blossom with Yone. Anyway, the reason why Yasuo is having flashbacks here is because here he is driven by his own emotions. Specifically, I do believe he is overpowered by regret. And the reason for that is because demons. Recently, in a post-ride release, we learned about the Azakana. The Azakana are tiny little demons that are currently polluting the entire Ionia. These minor demons attach to a host, and they drain its emotions until it dies, or until they evolve. Once an Azakana drains enough emotions, they become fully grown demons. And the reason why there are so many Azakana in Ionia these days is because after the Noxian invasion, with so many dead not being properly buried, the Azakana are free to feed on any of the corpses. And I believe that this old man is probably another developing Azakana that was attached to him. And here in this shot, the purple lines actually indicate the demon draining Yasuo. But then, Yone arrives, striking the demon. Now in this shot, if you look at the old man, there is no way Yasuo would know that the old man is a demon. That's why when Yasuo rushes in, he protects the old man. And then, as we get the reveal of Yone, he says that he is not here for Yasuo. Which makes sense, and I actually speculated about this on our stream. And it turns out, somehow I was right. In the same post, where they talked about the Azakana, at the very end, they also mentioned that nobody besides the Kinko Order is dealing with them. And it mentions, if only someone would. And as I speculated, Yone, who somehow came back, we are still not entirely sure how that happened, is here to deal with the Azakana that are polluting the entire Ionia. So he is not here for Yasuo, he is here to hunt down yet another demon. My theory is that it was the Azakana or some of the demons that brought Yone back. But still, until we get his bio, there is no way to be sure about it. Then the demon mentions that if he lives, I will return. By which he means that these demons can simply leap onto anything that is living. And since this demon is probably focusing on regret, as long as Yasuo lives, we can feast on him. And then finally, the demon calls him Suma's Great Fury, which reveals why it should have been a hint that this old man recognized Yasuo. The demon also mentions Pure Honor brought him here, but this part gets me a little bit confused. Because technically, Yasuo is honorless, because he did not stand up to his duty, but since they were both Soma's pupils, the demon can be actually talking about any of them. But this line probably wasn't supposed to make any sense, because it was just a segue to Yone saying this. It was revealed that the reason why everyone kept thinking that Yasuo was guilty was because Yasuo kept running. However, he kept running because he didn't want to kill anyone. He was only fighting them back in self-defense. And so it is this whole cursed circle. Yasuo kept running away from those who thought that he was guilty, and people thought that he was guilty because he was running away. He banished him into one of the masks. That's why this entire time Yone has the mask on his belt. It is most likely the prison for these demons. Quick editor's note. After I recorded this, Wright also revealed the inside story about Yone. And there, even though we don't have Yone's bio yet, they revealed what's the deal with him story-wise. So, it goes back to the Azakana. I already mentioned that the Azakana are the tiniest demons. That's why if you have a look at the demonic compendium, you can find them at the very bottom. But these Azakana are demons that focus on specific emotions. The examples given here are self-doubt, fear of being forgotten, and so on. It's very specific feelings. Now, the Azakana that attacked Yone had been hunting him for quite some time. That was while he was still alive. And this Azakana was feeding on Yone's emotions while he was hunting down Yasuo. However, Yone died before the Azakana had a chance to strike. And so, when Yone arrived in the Spirit Realm, that was the last opportunity the Azakana had to strike and devour Yone's entire soul. However, Yone managed to defeat it, although it did have severe consequences. Now, I understand that this might sound confusing, because I literally just retold what we saw in the previous animated trailer. However, still remember, the person we saw in that animation was the legendary elder brother. It wasn't Yone. So despite their stories being nearly identical, just keep in mind that the animation is supposed to represent what people imagine in their heads when someone is telling the story of the two brothers. You can probably just imagine Yone instead of the elder brother, and then the animation would be fully true. Anyway, after Yone defeated the Azakana that was reaching him, somehow Yone woke up back in the physical realm, with the mask permanently attached to his face. With the mask having the Azakana he just seen it look inside. So technically the Azakana is still attached to him, but it is in the form of the mask. Still, Yone isn't possessed by it. As far as he can tell himself, the Azakana holds no sway over it. Unlike what we can see with Wrath and Cain, where Wrath can actually sometimes take over the board. Here there is no connection between Yone and the Azakana. With that said, at least he did get some of his power. Then the post revealed another threat. The mystery of how Yone came back to the physical realm is the point of his story. We don't know, and he doesn't know either. But he can learn what happened by hunting down the other Azakana, because with each one he kills, there is a chance to understand the mystery of his own fate. After he killed some of them, he discovered that he can seal other Azakana into masks, and he can do this by learning their nature and their true name. So now he is on a quest to discover the name of his own Azakana. Once he learns it, that's when he can seal it away. Interestingly enough, in this cinematic, as he sealed away the Asukana, he shouted Kurosagor, which might be just another Toriegeton, or this might actually be the name of the demon.